Okay, groovy. All right. So, welcome to this week's roll up. Derivar is currently out for just personal reasons, so he'll be back hosting us next week. So, this one will be more so just kind of answering questions and just kind of talking to people on the channel. So, we'll keep the other segments a little bit shorter and just kind of go through us three for like 10 minutes or so, and then just open the floor up for people that have questions and just talking to our community. Um, so right off the bat, my name is Robert Smith. I'm the project director / lead programmer, and well, I just do whatever is needed depending on the day-to-day basis. Next, we have Michael. Michael, you want to introduce yourself real fast?
Michael, I'm the animation director.
And Efren, you want to introduce yourself?
How's it going? My name is Efren. I'm a level designer.
Radio. Okay, so that's a quick rundown of everyone. Um, so this week, myself personally, I've been working a lot on the performance. We recently got an old refurbished computer that's about 10 years old that runs an i7 like i7 fourth generation processor and the equivalent of a 1060 AMD card with about 16 gigs of RAM in a solid state, and I've been basically trying to go through and make it run and get at least 80 to 90 frames on computers that are potentially 10 years old. We were able to accomplish that by basically really scrutinizing a lot of our settings, our widgets, and a lot of our UI elements, basically widgets. You just kind of squeeze some more performance out of the engine. We also found out there were a couple of settings that just weren't on the Unreal scalability pages that we could be setting, or rather allowing users to tweak, relating to Lumen, that would in some cases double or triple people's frame rates. Before that setting was introduced in our experimental build, I would get like 30 to 40 frames. And then once I actually turned it on, so you can adjust global illumination for Lumen, I get 100 to 90 frames. Duravar, one of our mods, when he first bought the game, he'd get around 17 frames. And through all the work and effort we've done in the last couple of years, we've gotten as high as 40. And now with the setting, being able to tweak global illumination, he now sits at 90 frames per second. And I believe his computer has a 1080 and was built in 2013, 2014. So things are looking good in terms of basically just overall performance. I think Suki's another example. I think that when she turns all her specs down really low, she gets like 100 frames, 200 frames, and she can probably get it up to 300 if she really. But she has a like over the top computer. But the idea is that with the patch that was released last night, by tweaking global illumination and your lighting settings and just kind of finding something you're comfortable with, you can pretty much be in the hundreds, if not like the 80s to 90s at all times. So that's really cool. We're really excited about that, and we're trying to basically get that over to the normal build, hopefully tonight or tomorrow, depending on just what bugs we can squash now that we're working on, that you guys have been reporting on the Discord. And other than that, let me think. I've just been working on the graphic settings. I'm working on resetting the default settings. So that way, like if your settings files are screwed up or baked in somehow on the app data, I don't expect everyone to know how to go and find that folder and delete it or purge or any file. So I'm going in and putting in a prompt for that so you can reset your graphical settings. I'm working on a benchmark tool so that basically it will auto set your graphic settings if you want to, based off of testing your hardware. And then essentially just being like, oh, this should be low, that should be medium, that should be high, based off of how your computer scores, similar to how Red Dragon, the Wargaming series, does it whenever the first time you open the game. So I'm working on a system for that. So people that aren't as technically inclined and know how to like tweak their computers to like get the optimal performance on the graphic settings can at least get like a push in the right direction, and then they can just take it the rest of the way, hopefully. Let me see, what else am I working on? Oh, I was working on the age slots. If you look at some of the stuff that I posted in general chat, I've been looking to make the map not look like a potato or like a Google Maps reject in terms of basically when you zoom out, it looks like terrible. So now it looks good. it looks really good now. And then I set up multiple HLOD levels, similar to what Fortnite does, to where basically it just kind of switches between like a merging of assets as you get further away from the city. So you don't have to worry about like every individual chunk in a grid, and it breaks it up into segments. That's pretty much everything I'm working on this week. Our goal is to again merge everything we're working on now into a public build tonight or tomorrow, and then get on to 1.2, ideally sometime early this week, early next week. I'm sorry. Is to basically move on to civilian management. You can find a breakdown of what I was talking about in general chat of like kind of what 1.2 is going to incorporate in general chat from like an hour ago, or you could go to our roadmap website that's in the FAQ channel, FAQ and roles channel. So you can just kind of see an overview of like what we're doing now, what we're doing then. But I believe, based off of just everything that we've done, we've satisfied the requirement of improving the performance past day 8, pending some final testing, of course. But that's the hope for today and tomorrow. So we can move on, do the Medium Atlas Tower, do the new weapon widget to better depict like what the weapon stats are, so you guys have more meaningful information in terms of what is actually like going on behind the scenes, so you can have all the information you need to make the correct decisions, because there's a lot of systems behind the wall in terms of like our weapons are Battlefield Call of Duty complex in terms of like damage graphs fall off over time. um Obviously, there's a recoil system for every character. There's a spread system based off of their level. There's different damage graphs for silenced versus non-silenced. It's very complicated. And right now, you guys don't have any way of seeing that. So sometimes you guys will come to us and be like, is this a bug? Why does this gun and this gun have the same base damage? Because that number is a normalization or a generalization of the normal damage. That's all I have. Michael, why don't you hit it up in terms of basically what you've been working on this week, and then we'll go into questions after Efren.
Hold on one second. Can you have Efren go real quick? I'm trying to fix my audio.
Okay, Efren, all you. Hit it. What have you been working on this week?
Man, they just still banging away on North San Francisco, continuing the layout, getting the details on getting the details in on the landscape. Placing buildings, getting different layouts for blocks. Just thinking this stuff through to see how many cool locations I can work in there, as far as like players being able to dig in and hold off the infection, or little nooks and crannies that they can bob and weave out of, to dodge the infected or run away or what have you, or bottleneck them, lead them into a kill box or what have you. Just pretty much playing with stuff, like having a good time getting San Francisco done. I've been staring at the map a lot, at our reference photos, sort of kind of working all as much detail as I can with whatever time I have during the day.
I posted some examples of what you've been kind of blocking out, trying to basically get a layout for in podcast text, if you folks want to take a look. Because again, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of detail to put in to make sure that things aren't copy and pasty. Like it might seem copy and pasty now, but again, with just general blockouts to kind of like fill in a space, and then you'll see some of these blocks take more unique shapes, change and X, Y, and Z. So
Yeah,
yeah,
like
like
working in
there's
details for like Chinatown, which buildings should I put in? Definitely a lot of that's going to be done through the architecture, because there are some buildings in Chinatown that look pretty fucking awesome, like they're not even American. So I kind of want to throw that in there as well. Like you also have
the Oriental designs they have, they're cool. I've seen I think it's called Little China or something like that. I don't remember the name of it, but it's really
Chinatown.
cool. Chinatown, yeah.
And then
But
you have
yeah,
places like Little Italy as well that I put in there. I want to have buildings with like the Italian flag on it. There's also like a group of buildings that are kind of next to each other. The front of the buildings are painted in the colors of the Italian flag, so that gives it kind of like a cool look. They have the church at Washington Square. Just locations like that to represent parts of San Francisco, and then trying to work in certain arrangements of buildings that would allow players to build some pretty cool, bases within these complexes of buildings. Because it's really it's going to be really close quarter fighting, but there's also a lot of open space I'm trying to put in so that it doesn't get too intense, so that players don't get frustrated. But
Right
yeah,
on.
good stuff.
Okay, back to you, Michael. So we can open it up.
Right. So basically, what I've been working on is kind of going in, kind of touching up some of the current things that are already in. So, for instance, trying to make the weapon sound a little more punchy, going through and we did kind of add a better damage fall off or suppressed weapons. So, going in and tweaking those settings. We've been playing around with some of the new lieutenants, so getting some of the new meshes in, getting over some more polished animations over for the operator and kind of prepping getting the CERC kind of converted over to the same system as well. So that's basically what I've been working on for this week right now is just trying to get everything pretty enough for this patch. So you guys should notice the difference in how the guns feel, the weapons feel in terms of like rate of fire. There is something we're working on where units have a select fire type of thing. What am I trying to say?
Like more selective fire of
Basically,
like single fire bursts, like loading.
yeah. So once the target exceeds medium range, instead of them just going burt or just throwing rounds down range, they're gonna do more of a semi-automatic type of fire. So it will be a lot more accurate and it won't ping the spread system as frequently. So it will feel a lot more. I don't know. It's really just a kind of that nice little niche that I kind of have because I don't really like seeing them just sack ammo. You can kind of see it sometimes when they're shooting at targets and you just see like the ground just littered with bullet impacts because they're just spraying. So that's another thing that should be coming into this next update. The next thing as well, I think we kind of showed it a little bit, but the two new lieutenants are in there. So we have
You have a picture?
Rebecca. I do not.
You take a gather real fast and I'll post it in the channel.
I would have to launch the engine. Hold on.
I can hunt them down. You're good. I have the engine open already. Just keep talking.
So we have Rebecca Braddock as the first lieutenant, and then we have Jake Mason would be the second lieutenant. And the idea behind them is that I kind of think of it as kind of like Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. So the idea behind Jake is he's more of the what is he like a police kind of like infected. The best way to
Yeah, he's a
describe him is
SWAT
he's
operative
like
from Pierce.
yeah he's a SWAT operative from Pierce. So he has a due to legal reasons, we can't call it exactly what it is, but it's basically a PKP. It's the chain, and it is shooting quote unquote explosive rounds, just for dramatic effect. It's been quite a chore balancing that thing. It's kind of crazy, but kind of found a happy medium with it. Rebecca is going to be more of an undercover type of lieutenant. So she's using a modified M1911 kind of still debating like the abilities and stuff like that as it gets fleshed out. Like right now, they're just going to be in there. They're going to be able to shoot back at you. Don't expect them to be, better than the faction units in terms of their AI right now, but they are definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with, if that makes sense.
Okay, I posted the pictures. Rebecca is more of like we're kind of pushing her to be more of a stealth operative, kind of like Solid Snake from Metal Gear. So the idea is that she's more CQB, getting in close, shooting your units. She's more of a reference from Wesker for Rebecca. That's the girl one, and then the guy one we're taking more reference from like it's basically like God damn it, I can't remember his name now from Resident Evil. But essentially, the idea is he has a bigger gun, like an LMG,
Chris Wesker?
and no, not him. I can't remember his bloody name right now, but it'll come to me like after the AMA. I already know it. But again, the idea is that like you figure they'll and then obviously Chelsea will take traits from Mercer, so she won't have a weapon at all. She'll just be completely just hands on and have AOE abilities. And then the third lieutenant will be a support operative. So basically, he'll be like healing, buffing, giving them attributes of the infected around him. So he won't have a gun either. So the idea is we want to play off of different ways of like how the virus is like she's giving the power to these people to kind of retain some of their cognitive ability and be able to like lead her army in terms of like, okay, like they're gonna be a breakout force of like if you have her entrenched, they're gonna be, like they'll lead little casts and groups of the infected, and then we're gonna give each lieutenant unique abilities essentially. So then that way, like when you come across them, it's like, oh, it's just lieutenant. I'm just gonna burn her down with a couple of heavies. Now it's like, oh shit, it's a lieutenant. I have to actually think about this. He's gonna down my helicopters in seconds. He's gonna jump on them 1-to-1 and start nuking them. Like going into a lieutenant battle is gonna require preparation. It's gonna require you to actually use your positioning and your ground pool, make them come to you, and not just be as brainless as you just sending a crap to the heavies. You just harass them with mortars, and it's just GG. It's over. So that's one of the biggest things is to essentially just kind of push that, and then obviously we'll have it to where they can like we're gonna be pushing it like we're looking at Wesker, we're looking at other characters like that where they can like if you shoot them with a rocket or if a striker tries to run them over or other stuff like that, they'll be able to like step out of the way of the rocket. Or they'll be able to catch it and throw it somewhere else. Like if there's a grenade, you throw it in their direction. Those are all things that we're looking at to where it's like the lieutenants, Chelsea, are more hands-on. It will be done in bite-sized chunks going into the future because we have a whole patch addressed towards them. I think it's 1.4, 1.5 off the top of my head. We want to just really, really drill down the infected AI. But most likely by just sheer, by sheer just having to do the early game, they're going to get some new AI regardless. In the next, probably like in the next month or so, you'll see some subtle changes to lieutenants on the behind the scenes, but you really, really won't see them come to like their full, potential. Probably until at least around October-ish, if I were to guess. But that's the idea: is that you figure they're gonna give you a run for their money, they're gonna make you cry, and they're gonna make you really, really have to like think about what you're doing. And when they show up, it's gonna be like a make or break it moment in terms of like, okay, you got to get out of there kind of deal, or like bring in a bunch of reinforcements to counter them. And we'll probably give Rebecca a cloak, and then play around with her versatility of being able to run up walls, being able to like jump around and do acrobatics, just like Wesker is the idea. So again, we're pulling a reference from like different characters in different games or in the genre of like zombie movies, zombie games, like that kind of stuff. So really excited about that. So Michael's like really waiting for feedback. He's like eagerly just staring on the Discord, like, what do you think about the lieutenants? What do they think about the balance for their guns? So if you're running into lieutenants on the experimental, or hopefully tonight, tomorrow, when we merge the experimental over to normal, like put your feedback out. We want to hear what you guys have to say about the lieutenants, how they feel, if they feel broken, if they feel too easy. There is the next patch for the lieutenants is going to introduce better AI for them, so they're a little bit more intelligent in terms of how they handle their guns when they melee and when they shoot, and how their pathfinding works. So you will notice that that's probably required until you're fully able to judge them. And then from there, you'll be able to give us some intel of like what direction we need to push, or from an animation standpoint, AI standpoint, we'll write it down. We'll come back to it over chunks here and there, squeezing in between other bits of work. But you want to talk about the giving before we open up the floor? I mean, that was a big thing you
I
worked on.
forgot about that. So
I'll find some
I don't know.
gifts.
It's like randomly. You probably, since they're all in there, you might as well just do a quick little Gazo gift because all of them give now.
Okay, I'll go do that. Just talk about it real fast. I'll get a gift.
So I think it might have been like last week. We just got like a tickle where we were just like, we need dismemberment. And so we started brainstorming ways that we could implement that and not like give ourselves like this crazy overhead, because the biggest thing that's been holding us back is how the current units are set up on the rig. Their skinning was all sorts of jank. So anytime we would do like different I guess like poses or like cutting off like certain parts of their body, it would completely destroy the skinning. And so importing in the new infected models, we kind of fix that problem. There's no skinning issues. Everything kind of works with the UE4 skeleton completely. And so with that being said, we went ahead and just took the models into Max and I just cut them up, and we hooked up a pretty elaborate system that honestly you can't even tell. It's pretty on the spot of how it does that mesh swap. Definitely have to add in some more death animations, because right now they all kind of die from the same chest death animation where they kind of fall back. But still got to flesh out that system. Want to add some more arrays for them, but as it stands right now, you can take off both their arms, both their legs, and you can blow off their head. Furthermore, explosions still being tweaked with, but we'll do a full body gib of where it just blows off every limb in their head at the same time. The only final thing we need to do with that is dropping the gib model, if that makes sense. So dropping a gib mesh. So like if you blow off their arms, obviously 2 arms fall on the ground. That still needs to be in there, and that's kind of more on the polish side of it. But really the biggest thing is seeing how much it impacts performance, because those skeletal meshes do have to be loaded already. So those are just sitting in your memory right now. So just kind of seeing how that all ties in together. But with this performance upgrade, I don't see it being an issue. And I mean, like, just through my play testing that I've done over the last few days, I sat for 5 days in game and just took on hordes and hordes, and I didn't see any hitching from them giving. So you guys should enjoy that. And I think Robert is making a GIF to show you guys kind of what you guys what's to be expected basically for this update.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm being slow. Okay, that should work. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Okay, let me gift that. And I'm uploading it,
Yes,
and I'll put it in
while
podcast channels.
while we're going over that, I'll just kill some dead air. So like, been reading some of the Steam posts, and people have been talking about some redundancies with the weapons, of where there's like a lot of options, but not a lot to be said. So I guess like the biggest thing is, for instance, the Spec Ops, I feel like is kind of a foster child unit. I don't really see a lot of people using them. I could be wrong. I just, whenever people post screenshots, it's usually like when people are posting like showing off their bases and stuff like that is really where I only see them. So the night vision is paying off. So like with that being said, is like looking into their weapons is kind of making it more unique. I kind of want to step away from having like units have overlapping weapons, because I feel like that just kind of it just kind of makes it useless at that point to get like a Spec Ops unit if he can use the same weapon that the radio operator uses. I mean, like, what's the point, you know? And so kind of looking at that and looking at ways we can make their weaponry more unique for their play style. And so that's definitely something that we're wanting to kind of dive into, but it's definitely something that we're going to have to get more data off of. And once we can get better analytic stuff in the game and see what classes people are fleshing out and stuff like that, we can start balancing, tweaking the approach. With that being said, though, I did want to clear that the Vector that is in game for the Spec Ops is based off a 45 caliber model. It's not a 9mm model, so that's why it's in there with the MP5. They're two separate damage tables. They're not both 9mm. And for instance, the Spec Ops MP5 is a 10mm, and the Vector is a 45.
We'll have that information when we do the revised weapon widget, so that way people will understand why certain weapons have certain damages, and just be able to see like how damage falls off over time, over distance. Sorry, is that we'll probably be looking at MMOs or like the Division for how they do their damage, like the little graph systems, and then just write our own. So when you highlight over a weapon in the weapon market, it will just basically break down like, okay, what's so special about this weapon? What is it really good at? And that way you can make the right decision in terms of like what kind of situation you think you're going to be going into. I put the GIF up in podcast text. So if you guys want to take a look, that's the system we've been working on. I kind of left this out, but I put a lot of time in earlier this week to fix that stupid bug where like when units would die, they do that weird levitating bug where they'd like float and then fall. And that was like a weird performance thing that was happening where we did the same performance, but it was like it needed to turn on when they were doing like special ragdoll animations. update kinematics. So you figure now no longer will you see like a ragdoll freak out and like do some weird hovering levitating crap when they play a death animation and then they ragdoll. So it should always be seamless. I mean, there's always a chance of a tiny little like micro pop when they hit the ground based off of like their positioning of where the animation puts them. But that's I don't know of any game that doesn't have that issue to some degree. So let's see. Is that everything we have for the week before we open it up for questions?
I'm just looking at the backpack belt fed factors.
Oh my god.
Honestly, yeah, I would say that's pretty much everything I can think of. I will say right now there are going to be some oddities until that can be ironed out. So, for instance, the operator will definitely T-pose when he is in Little Birds and in vehicles for right now. Right now, as it stands to Little Bird, he will actually sit and aim and not T-pose, but repelling, he will do his default pose just because we're trying to figure out a way around a current system right now. So that is going to be just I guess we'll put a disclaimer in the patch notes for that, is that the operator will be bugged.
Let's see. Okay, so I guess we will open it up for questions. If there's not anything else that we need to throw out there. So let's see. No one's raising their hand, so I guess I'll just jump over the podcast questions. So let's see. I know 1.2 is focused on civilian management, but is it possible? What are the chances of arming said civilians as a last resort? I know the anarchists and police factions are there, but they aren't exactly polished yet. So 1.2 is all about that. 1.2 is about basically just taking the civilians all the way down the line. So in my mind, that's a couple of things. The first thing is essentially doing the new early game because that's going to integrate into the new civilian management system and just generally being able to see cars and being able to see people in the city to some degree to at least be able to like do some amount of like it's a lively city, like things are actually going on here. So we're looking into mass entity for Unreal Engine 5, or we'll look into making our own little custom solution for it. Um, we'll be making it to where basically, if they have weapons, you'll be able to take them away. Um, I mean, arming civilians, if there's enough people mentioning it, we'll look into that. I haven't heard too much of that, but I'm not against it. It's just kind of that would probably become towards the end of the 1.2 and not in the initial. Because our primary goals for it are, again, the new early game, making the city an actual city, and then automation in terms of like you don't have to sit there and babysit a unit to like, oh hey, civilian, come over here, go to that tent, go to that tent, go to the cages. Like the system will just see that they're in the area and automatically issue them an order of like, okay, you're allowed in. You'll have an ROE that says like, are you infected or not infected? Can we tell you're infected? And then based off of that, it'll send them to the cages. It'll send them to euthanization. It'll send them to general hold. It could send them directly to the helipad. And the idea is that we want to automate that entire like inception, that entire like onboarding process. So then that way we can get to the point of mass exoduses of zones. So in bulks of 20 to 40 civilians, we can be spawning them consistently and dumping them into your Chinooks, have lines that are piled up. So then that way they just do it automatically. So if you have an edict where like you tell everyone in the zone, just get out of your homes, come to this zone, be evacuated. You don't have to go out and look for them. If you want to, great. If the only time you really would have to go out and look for them is if it's in a red or a yellow zone, a zone you don't own and Chelsea owns. Theoretically, you could save some civilians that you come across. But the idea is that if you own the zone in any capacity, you can just issue an order on that zone. Everyone in this zone is to go to this zone. Or if you're in this zone, find your nearest helipad and get out. And then there'll be a limit, obviously, because we have to worry about computer resources of like 20 or 40 people that will just start using the ROE system to figure out how they're allowed to interact with your units. Do we go to the general pop first? We wait 5 minutes and then we send them to the Chinook. So then that way you can kind of get a queue going. Because theoretically that's more optimal to fill the general hold and keep getting so that way you can process them in and out and figure out if some of them are going to turn, some of them aren't going to turn. You could put them in the cages for 8 to 16 minutes to basically see and then move them to the Chinook and then export them off the islands. That's the idea. Is that basically sitting down and essentially just like figuring out how that's going to look, what the UI is going to look like, figure out based off of our initial ideas what needs to be put in there as a base, show the community, see what they have to say in terms of things that they think should be automated or the rules are too complicated, too programmer centric, refine, tweak, and then get that out. Because automation is a huge part of 1.2. It'll take probably the most time because a lot of AI, it's a lot of pathfinding, it's a lot of making sure that they get stuck, they know to get themselves unstuck to get back on their path. And that's a big thing we're pushing on there, is to basically make sure that's all functioning. And then that's the biggest part of it. And then a little bit lieutenant tweaks, a little bit AI tweaks to make sure they know that when you build an evacuation center, they know it exists. If they can target it, they will target it, because essentially you are depleting Chelsea's resources in a zone. So the idea is by pushing that, we're pushing another way to play the game, where you can literally just make nomad lands, where you just empty 20,000, 15,000, 10,000 people out of a zone by just holding it long enough for all the helicopters to leave and empty that zone. And then if Chelsea takes it, she gains nothing from it. So like theoretically, like you're kind of like you like we get to the point of adding San Francisco and North in October. Theoretically, if you start where she isn't, like the virus is coming. I mean, we all know the virus is coming. We know what game we're playing. You can just quarantine off where the Oakland Bay Bridge and just start evacuating people in those zones. And then theoretically, you could try and deplete this main city with the factions. I'm still sure getting you some conflict, depending on if you hate them or you don't, or if you like them, whatever, however you're playing. And then Chelsea will do her best. And once she realizes that you're evacuating in that zone, she'll send units to try and get into that zone. She'll send worms. She'll send people to basically try and start a virus there to counteract what you're doing. And that's the plan when it comes to that. Let's see. So yeah, that's pretty much 1.2. 1.3 will be the anarchists and the police faction on their own, focus for an entire month with no distractions, besides obviously just bug fixing and performance tweaks throughout, to just make sure that they're done and ready to go. Because our goal is this month 1.2, next month 1.3, and then get ready for a Halloween event in October, which we'll be telling you guys about as we get closer to it in about a month or so. We'll start putting up the stuff and kind of hinting to the October update. So yeah, let me see. Is there any question? Anyone raised their hand yet? Got one from Gamer Tom. So I will let him up, and then I'll answer another voice question. And then don't forget, you guys can ask weapon questions, level design questions if you're curious. Oh, wait, all you, Tom.
So I have a question about it. So she's gonna try to stop you from evacuating civilians. That's her idea, right? She'll try to
Yes.
stop you from saving the people, so she can spread more of her Pangu Virus to the people.
Yes.
So that's gotta be challenging because sometimes players can destroy the bridge to stop her from getting to your people.
We're looking into counters for that. One thing that we were discussing today was possibly bringing back or putting back on the table the ability to swim. The second idea, we were looking into adding a subway underground system that would connect to the underground tunnel entrances that we have all over Treasure Island, Angel Island, and San Francisco. So then that way they could use that tunnel network to get across and sneak into other zones if you don't have those subway entrances under security lockdown. And then that way the factions could use them. So yeah, so that's something we're discussing, and we're trying to figure out what can we do. The third option that me and Efren were talking about earlier as well is we were looking about for the technical reasons of how long it would take for us to implement the underground tunnels idea. We were thinking about putting that off potentially a little bit longer, and then working on a bird Niagara type affected that basically was like a swarm of locusts or birds that will sometimes like go from one zone island to another island. And then that would mean that like you just got to make sure that if there's like an island, like if you're like closed off and there's bridges, you got to just make sure that if they're gonna try to do a direct path of sending like birds to go and infect the zone, or to like turn people to start a virus infection.
Oh, like you gotta shoot down the birds.
Essentially, so that's something that we were looking into as well. we're looking into those avenues to figure out what is the most thing we can accomplish with the resources that are available to us. Because you figure doing an underground tunnel network is something that we're all salivating at the mouth for, but it would add a lot of overhead to what we're already doing right now and delay other things. So we're just kind of okay, how do we counter? Sorry, when you build on Angel Island and there's no infected that spawn there, or you manage to just slap off the one lieutenant that spawns there, and you now have that island and there's no threat to you. And or for instance, when people leave their winters on the carrier, we're coming for you guys because we're gonna most likely be adding it to where little guys or the Leviathan will go by and spit out guys on the carrier and try and overwhelm the carrier and destroy it potentially in mid to late game.
Yikes. So
And
that means you get a second objective to fend the carrier.
essentially, because the idea is that we want to make that a mobile base. We want to make it to where it can do ammo resupplies, it can do gas resupplies, it can repair your units, and long term, we'll potentially look into being able to build aircraft there. So then that way you could actually have aircraft stored underground in the storage areas, or have it when they just spawn like Red Dragon, they just go out and do airstrikes.
Mhm.
So that's something we're looking at to basically long term wise to give the carrier more value in gameplay, and it's something you want to keep alive. You want to have a security team there. Maybe
That'd be awesome if
you
could
want to.
control the carrier. That'd be awesome
That's
if you
something.
could control the
Yeah,
carrier.
that's something we want to do. Is that you figure I talked about it a couple times in general chat. I think it was mentioned a couple times in an AMA. Is that we're about to? So right now, Dimitri is working on a modular Hummer that will replace the Paragon on the CERC tent because no one liked that vehicle. And the idea was is that's supposed to be like an all-around infantry support vehicle. So then we're making them so they're invaluable to move around with your ground units early to mid game as a support for limited ammo, healing, buffing. Being able to have units shoot from them, and giving the different add-ons that the Hummer can get because there's so many damn variations. And then once he
As long as you
finishes
don't need
that,
those, I was gonna say,
yeah,
as long as you need those battleships, because battleships can also defend the carrier too.
well, we're probably not going to go as deep as that yet. That's more of a long-term goal if we ever get to the point of adding that level of aquatic combat. It's something we want to do, but it's in the cards later on. Right now, the immediate goal is to get the carrier texture. Right after we get the Humvee done, get the carrier finalized. There's if we're going to have a modular platform, so you can change out some of the weapons on it, or if they just be you buy a thing and then you can just add more guns to it to get initial defenses going. So that way you can keep it, you can bring it next to a coastline or whatever. And maybe you can shoot some infected for support. But those are all things that we're going to be discussing next. Probably the cover will be done 2 weeks, and then that 1 to 2 weeks, and then that 1 to 2 week period will transition over to the carrier and start pushing that on the back end. So slowly but surely, we'll squeeze in tiny little features that are just hidden in the patch notes. Oh, you can now move the carrier. Oh, you can now click on the carrier and build helicopters when you're in stage 2, that kind of stuff, and then they'll just sit on the tarmac and all that kind of stuff. So they're not going to be major, they're not going to be added to the roadmap. Because it's more little tiny things that we kind of squeeze in when we can, in between of other stuff when people are free and they have the time outside of programmers, modeling resources per se. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. Because for us historically, the most time goes in modeling the assets. Because sometimes some of these vehicles take weeks, months, quite a bit of time. Because a lot of detail that goes into them, especially with nanite being a thing, in terms of basically the poly counts we can go up to make them really, really, really good. Anyhow, let me move on to the next question.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you for. Let's see. Questions. What do we got? Oh yeah, Nemesis, Red Rose. That was what I was thinking of. Something like a heavy gun ornament for the SWAT guy. Obviously, it's not going to look like Nemesis. We were thinking about something that's a really big, bulky guy that just kind of goes in and just lays out stuff in terms of his DPS, his weapons, a lot of suppression with the LMG basically. That's something we're trying to try to pull some parallels from Nemesis or the SWAT guy, the SWAT infected lieutenant. Let's see. X Blaster asked a question. This has probably been answered in the future, but to what extent will we be allowed to interact with the anarchists and police factions and any others, such as funding or arming the police, arming civilians that remain on the island but aren't or don't evac? So,
Never.
God damn it. So, let me see. Hold on. Let me just double check there. When it comes to the
1.2.
yeah, that's 1.3. for the
1.3.
factions at 1.3, civilians at 1.2. So the civilian aspect, again, if there's enough demand, when we get to 1.2, we'll squeeze in absolutely. If you guys really want to arm civilians that badly and send them out to die, even though they're like literally like garbage units, we'll look into it. If there's really that many people that are Mars at it, because they
Is that a
literally
serious
have
question?
they literally have 20 health. Like they're like assaults have like 200 health, I think it is. So like literally they're just cannon fodder. But if people are that much advocating for it, it's something we'll look into.
Paper soldiers.
Basically, they're like they'd be the equivalent of the GLA mob soldiers, the ones that just like die like.
No. That is a horrible way to. Those mob soldiers fuck shit up. Like,
But their health though, they drop like flies when you're actually
fuck
like
shit
shooting
up.
them.
Are you kidding me? I remember there's a whole mission dedicated to playing as them. They devastate.
I'm talking about their health. Okay, fine. You're talking about their DPS. I'm talking about their survivability. Because once
Those
you have something out there that
Molotovs,
outranks
damn.
them. Oh yeah, that shit was like really when we were playing that like when
That
you're
was
over.
broken.
It was that and
That
the
was
Air Force General planes that like have lasers. GG, you win. Okay, so yeah, the idea is again, we'll come back to that when we get to 1.2 next week. And then you can bring it up when we get to the point of ending it. If there's enough demand for people, actually, I'll put a poll at worst case if like we're still like having issues in terms of like it's really wanted, and then of course for the rest of it, we were talking about having it to where if you build enough reputation with the faction, then you can recruit vehicles and units out of their army. A lot of people were insistent on that, and they were like, "Well, fuck, these units look really cool. Like, I want to use those SWAT vehicles and all that." So myself and Dimitri were like, "Fine, we'll cave. We'll put it in there." So that's something we want to do. Where as you work with them, as you ally with them, as you protect them, you'll be able to build reputation. I think you'll be able to use that reputation to buy units from them. That will basically be you can fold into your army to use in very different ways. Let me see.
Meat shield.
There's no such we don't have anything in terms of funding or arming them yet for the police or for the anarchists. There's no systems in place for that because the idea is the anarchists have access to basically like they take over gun stores, they steal guns that are just anything like mass produced crap, like and then the police are running off of a cache of weapons that in our universe they set up after their version of 9/11 on Liberty Island, when they did that, released the chemical gas attack on there. Is the idea is that the government basically put caches of like weapons around the country, kind of like what they did for our 9/11, is they trained the responders and put a bunch of weapon caches all over the United States, just in case the police needed access to military weapons in a short amount of time. So that's the idea for our lore, is that they already have access to the best weapons. In terms of like they're just pulling from those caches, and that's just where they're getting their weapons and everything. They make a guy, but the idea about Pierce is that like he's never going to be able to outmatch you because he's a very limited skill set of officers. Like they're a small pop in terms of like what he can actually exert his power on. So the idea is he vassalizes civilians to work with him to extend his army and expand his power base. And again, the idea is an attack on one is an attack on all of them. So that's his thing. Is he'll find civilian groups that are dynamically generated in each grid with 1.2 and be like, okay, I want to work with you. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to work with you. If they're cannibals, fuck them. We're going to kill them tomorrow. And that's the idea, is that it like has that level. Like there's 3 personalities we're going to generate at 1.2. Gun lovers, gun touch, whatever we're going to call them. And then it's going to be cannibals, raiders, and then it's going to be peaceful, like hippies, whatever. And the idea is they'll all kind of get over on each other. Like some of them that are like, obviously the peaceful hippies will sometimes have guns. The
peaceful hippies.
yeah, basically it's just more so a personality type. They're not going to actually be hippies, but it's more so like they're not as aggressive as say the people like with like the veterans like kind of gun group. And then obviously the raiders and the cannibals are going to be like, we're going to eat everyone. We're just out for ourselves. And the idea is every time you play a game, it will roll every single zone. So every circle, every like box that you have in the grid in 1.2 will roll a personality type. So now when you're going into a zone in the beginning of the game, over time, those groups will emerge. So you won't know when you first start, oh, look, there's cannibals in this group I just started building in. 20 minutes, 40 minutes in, you'll discover a cannibal group is growing under you without you even knowing. And the idea is that they'll target your units when they're alone. Send out a little sniper to go on that rooftop. Oh no, where did he go? He's dead now.
Little Timmy.
He got stabbed. Little Timmy got stabbed to death because someone wasn't watching his back. So that's the idea, is that you figure like you don't know what you're gonna run into as you're going throughout the city as the situation deteriorates to the point where it's like you're not just fighting the infected, you're fighting like these civilians that are just trying to survive as well. So it's in your best interest to work with them, and if it's a cannibal group, hunt them all down and kill them all, because there will be no diplomacy ability for cannibals. You kill them all, basically, when it comes down to it. Kind of like the Raiders from Fallout was the idea. That's where we'll get the inspiration for them. It's literally the Raiders from Fallout 4. So yeah, that's coming in. That's basically obviously one of the big tenets of 1.2 is just dynamic civilian groups. So they're basically like a sub factions that are just, again, like then we'll get the next tier of factions with Pierce and Natalie. Like they have more power, they're more organized, and that'll be in 1.3. So that's kind of like a drive-by example. Let me just scroll. Is anyone raising their hands? No. Okay, back to podcast questions. How much time do we have? We have approximately about 10 minutes. So let's see. Let me just scroll up because a lot of people have been talking. Oh shit, that's a lot of questions. Okay. What are your plans for individual soldiers and their worth of development? I feel like they're too bit expendable currently, as you can easily replace your veterans from the start of the game with equally good soldiers just by waiting a little bit longer when spawning them. A system where individual veterans are worth more and feel more rewarding, in my view. Something like an XCOM, where the soldier's death can really feel a loss to the entire operation. So my question is what do you say, Michael?
I was gonna say, is that kind of like what we were talking about yesterday?
Well, kinda. He's talking about how like when you are you training your units to Delta Force like level of veterancy, Flip, or are you talking about like the initial recruits, Flip? Just to make sure we're talking about Philip. Was that Philip or Flip? Oh, it's like a Philip. Oh, my bad. Well, on level 5, they should be mini John Wicks. So like you figure like they should be like really, really responsive to the area around them because we changed values of how they handle their weapon and their target acquisition. We decreased target acquisition as they rank up, so they're more quickly to shoot people, and they have health that they gain every level. So if it's not enough, that's probably a system that we need to look at again.
That system might not be working because there isn't anything that shows that their target acquisition goes up. Like I can add their base target acquisition, but there's no
hidden.
values for that.
It's hidden. I have to expose that. That's something I need to expose to you. Let me write that down. Put it in my reports channel. Yeah, let me add that. Okay, so I think it adds like 5 or 10 health per level, which is like nothing actually. So let me write that down. Then you and I can talk about that after this and see if we can improve that from his suggestion. So that would be expose how much health is gained per level plus expose how expose target acquisition per level.
Yeah, that I will agree. The biped thing is fair. The bipod mod is very narrow. It's like tunnel vision almost.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's more lane control. So yeah, it'd definitely be OP and Horde.
Is that a double barrett cow? My God. Why do I even look at that chat? That's just okay. So let's see.
There's a chat for you.
Yep. With Spec Ops or really anyone else, is there a way to airdrop troops, like maybe either a research option or a perk? That's something we want to do in the future. We need to find the time, either 1.4 or 1.5, to just redo a lot of the CERC buildings. Well, some of the CERC buildings. We've already snuck in quite a bit in terms of the guard towers, and we have to add in the medium Atlas tower in the next couple of days to next week to officially finish 1.1. And basically we want to add more airstrikes, and we want to add more building variations. Let's see. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. Because like airstrikes, call-ins basically like we want to add it so we can call in like company heroes. One where you would call in like a team and then like have like an anti-tank gun. You call in a team with like an airborne squad. I want to do that with the Peregrine that's being taken out from the CERC tent. Is I want to make that where like a Delta Force team like parachutes down on the vehicle or whatever, and then they get in and they drive or whatever, and like it has like a rocket launcher on it or whatever. So that way you can call in special units from the air, like the minigunner. But eventually we'll probably switch over some of the call-ins to VTOLs. Here and there, we're gonna kind of try and find some kind of synergy between, because we want to introduce VTOLs as well as like another transport unit. It has like a minigun under it or whatever. But that's something we want to look into in the future, because we're still looking into the Bradley and the Abrams. Those are all things that are on our radar. It's just we got to figure out the best time to add them and make sure that we've added enough to the infected where they have a viable countermeasure. So let's see. Oh, what else do we got here? When will all the bridges be destructible or interactable? I'll have bridges that fold up and back down. So we're waiting until Epic finishes Chaos Destruction for that, because you figure it's still beta and it causes quite a bit of performance issues, a lot of issues of just like the implementation of it now. So when it leaves beta, it's more stable, then we're gonna go gung ho crazy in terms of like bridges, objects in the world. Like our goal is again get it to company heroes level, where like buildings, cars can drive through buildings. You can throw a grenade, it'll destroy a wood fence. Like so that way, like the entire world becomes a sort of your playground. Full building destruction's out of the cards, based off of just a skill what that would require. But at the very least, we want to just do like you can like if you see a fence there and you want to get through it, have your cars drive through it. Now you just open up a whole new way to flank the enemy that they weren't prepared for, especially the infected or just lieutenants. Or the factions, civilian factions, because the idea is that at 1.2 we're going to introduce a dynamic civilian camp system where they'll look at the geometry of the area around and they'll dynamically place camps and walls and tents based off of like their like personality per se. So again, it'll be like, oh, like they'll put up walls here. They'll move cars in a way that basically like make it to where like Walking Dead basically. We basically pull a reference from Walking Dead for when Rick and all of them make their camps and other groups make their camps. Like the governor's camp as an example, where they just put all those cars to close off a street, and then they have like a makeshift catwalk to shoot from over it. So that's the level we want. That's why 1.2 is just civilians in its entirety. That's going to add a bunch of stuff that adds more layers to the gameplay. So hopefully that will kind of solve what you're getting at there. Let's see. Speaking of, let me make sure no one has their question up. No one has a question up. Okay, manpower system. Speaking of which, the game could use some kind of manpower system that works in tandem with the economy and population cap, as you can easily keep throwing people and vehicles at the infected in the end game and find it mattering at all, since everyone is easily replaceable. Is this something you plan on adding, or do you have other plans for the economy and such? Ultimately, we don't plan on doing that. We plan on basically getting to a point in development where we can actually better balance the money, so you're not just floating in the Benjamins as you are right now. Ultimately, we're going to try and increase the population with the better performance. So we got to see. Really, we're not going to touch the population until 1.3 after factions are in, so we can see how everything falls into place in terms of the cost of Pierce, cost of Natalie, the cost of dynamic civilian groups, and the civilian evacuations. And then we'll be like, okay, we can afford to give another 40. We can afford to give another 20, or maybe just decrease the population of some units with the resources that are available to modern computers now, because by then it would stand that computers are always getting better every 6 months, essentially. Let's see. Any voice questions? No. Okay. Podcast questions. Here's a question regarding shared weapons. I don't know if you want shaded weapons for each type, but there can be a cross-faction exemptions and one circumvention. This is also a weapon suggestion. Obviously, make a fake name version for legal reasons. The MP5 should be available to all factions since it's an old and mass-produced weapon. We are planning. Michael's really the person that's in charge of that, and from what he's Mike, why don't you take this question? I'm not talking the whole time.
Sorry, I like spaced out. I'm like dealing with other shit.
I'll copy
was
and paste it to
actually
your
reading
DMs.
Yeah, I was actually reading that while you were talking about the last two questions.
We're all you.
With that being said, when it comes down to like the shared weapons, my biggest gripe right now is me and Robert were kind of talking about this yesterday, where I just kind of
For
felt like there was
hours.
yeah, for hours. It was kind of like it was like a low key like I really hate you right now, but so basically I was basically saying that I kind of felt like there were a lot of redundant unit types of kind of like I felt like there really was no need for people to make spec op units because you can get suppressed weapons and stuff for every unit just about as is. And I mean, if you look at it in a sense, is like the medic is basically an assault that can heal. You know, he doesn't have access to a scar, but I mean like his play style, I mean like I was trying to think of a way that we could have lots of options in weaponry in the game that would make the classes more, what's the word, situational, where the spec ops have more, they don't have like the extended magazine type of shit. It's more of like they have like hard hitting weapons, but they don't have like they can't mag dump basically is what I'm trying to say. It's like yeah, they have like the 300 knockout, they have the honey badger, they have the fucking 45 caliber effector, they have the MK14 CQB, like stuff like that, where they have an arsenal of weaponry that benefits their playstyle because yeah, they have a faster movement speed, they have slightly lower health, but they're intended to hit harder than any of the other units besides, the sniper, obviously. And then we were talking about how the sniper has a DMR and then he has the M98 Bravo as like his, end all basically. And just kind of looking at that of seeing how ways of where I was referencing how Battlefield has its class system where you have like a recon, the heavy, the assault, and then the engineer, and how they tie into is like all the classes can all use carbines, but their primary focus is like the heavies can't use assault, the assault rifles or the rifle category in Battlefield. The sniper or the recon can only use snipers, DMRs, and carbines in Battlefield. Like I was looking at it in terms of that kind of area in terms of like sharing weaponry of where their primary weapons would be unique for that class and the shared weapons would be like yeah, of course, a recon unit can use an SMG, that type of shared unit.
My side, I was arguing essentially that I felt it was basically a con of playing the CERC faction. Is that like it's like the real military where you have a job for every single person, and then there's a lot of redundancy to a certain degree, but it's like that guy's a radio guy, that guy's a medic, that guy's an assault guy, that's a machine gunner. So what I was arguing essentially in our discussion yesterday was more so like when we add in the infected as a playable race, when we add in Fenrir as a playable race, it makes it to where there's a con of playing a Circ. Whereas like if you have a good synergy of units, then it's like okay, like at least the other factions know they can counter it, and it's not too samey to them. Because like the idea of Fenrir is they're supposed to have a lot of hybrid units, like what Michael suggesting, like Battlefield, where they have a lot of like assault slash a medic, or like obviously we know how infected play. So the idea is that like at least when you're playing a Circ, if you can have a good synergy of units and you can just kind of set them up correctly in the field, it gives some kind of order of operations of like people to counter the Circ when they're at their strongest of like, well, we hit the radio men first to isolate them so they can't call on airstrikes. Then we hit the medics, so then that way they can't heal their units. And then we trickle down their snipers, their assaults, and their heavies is the idea. And then they have tanks, we get those as well at times. So that way when you're playing as other factions against them, it's like Total War is the idea, where like every faction kind of has their nuances or like their pros and their cons, and they're distinctly different. Because we all know Infected will play like the Zerg, and then the Fenrir will play more like I can't actually think of an example of how to play them, but it's more so like they have like a mobile command base, and they don't play like other people play. They're more like hybrid of everything else. They have like very low pop, but they have very hybrid units, very specialized units. They use robots and all that stuff. And then we have the CERC. That's like your standard military that has like all the roles, and there's obviously like what Michael's saying. There's some quite a bit of like like obvious like the assault is just a medic, but the medic is just like assault with the healing ability. But the idea is that it gives some kind of like challenge to playing in some nuance to playing each faction is the idea that I was arguing with. In terms of like, okay, like I know how to counter this group when I'm fighting against them now. And obviously with Fenrir, you'd have to learn their hibernations and figure out like, okay, I want to target this unit. So yes, to a certain degree, it'd be like obviously the same because you want to target some units over other units. But again, that was the idea I was trying to instill from a design standpoint. But yeah, I am for figuring out diversifying the factions so they have more purpose. A counter or like a compromise that I was giving to Michael was to basically add it to where we just push the abilities further. We take away the claymores potentially from the engineers, we add the minesweeper vehicle, and we give it to where snipers can place claymores or mines. We add it to where the engineers can throw like bombs or whatever. We add it to where the assaults can switch out the grenades to incendiary, to shards, to fragmentation, to flashbangs. We basically just give more abilities every group, every unit to just make them shine a little bit more, so they're not as like, oh, that's just a reskin medic. They just can heal people occasionally. So that's kind of what we're stuck on right now, and we're still kind of debating internally. Is do we just save the whole battlefield approach of like hybridization for Fenrir, and then just keep pushing CERC down the line and just expand upon their abilities based off of their given role in the military, and then rename the assault to riflemen, is what Michael was suggesting, to basically make it more clear.
We could still have that unified system with like CERC having like the battlefield class system. It's just we could approach the abilities different with Finrar, where they're more hybrid versus CERC, just to cut down my biggest thing is the redundancy of the units, because most of my playthroughs I don't use the radio op guy. Like, yeah, the call-ins are nice, but he's just, I don't know. It's like a hard way to. I'm trying to think of how can I say this in a PG manner. I curse every single thing. Honestly, I just find him fucking useless.
Oh my god. Well put, Michael. Well put. This is how we talk in a room when nobody's around. We just basically like, this is garbage. What is this? And then he says something to me, and then we go back for like 2 hours. And then we go play a game afterwards.
Yeah, so I mean, like, that's the biggest thing. Is like we want to make the game engaging. Like, we want to make you guys like think about like more situation of where, oh, here's a horde coming. Let me just shit out a bunch of assaults. But then you have like, we have like snipers. We have the engineer of the SMA. You don't see people making a bunch of SMAs to take out a horde. You can just shit out a bunch of assaults for half the cost. You know what I mean? It's just like. All right, John, nobody asked you.
I make smalls. I make them in every fire team. And I keep them on hold fire in the background for that rainy day where I'm about to get overran. Yeah.
You can take your smalls and keep campfire. Well, so
the
assaults, yeah, it's just like the assaults have the flare ability. And yeah, it lasts for a hell of a long time. I mean, like, they do so much more. Like, you can take over the whole map with just assaults. I mean, the heavies are, don't get me wrong, like, the heavies do decimate with that rapid fire ability. They do put down some work. It's just the biggest thing is, like, I find a majority of my playthroughs just masking out guard towers and assaults and pushing heavies. That is how I do my playthroughs, and I usually kill patient 0 within 3 days. And that's just how I go. I can take those guys, lock down 3 zones, make a scientist, make a bunch of guard towers, and I can just farm DNA. I don't have to use any other unit. I don't even use vehicles.
Well, let's open the floor. What do the people think? Show us the way, people
Let
that
me
have come to
take-
AMA. Oh, Cop has his hand raised. Hopefully it's relevant to what we're asking. All right, Cop, hit us with it. What do you think about what we're talking about?
Well, I hear your voices, and I actually do understand what you're trying to do, but I want to just clarify what my question slash suggestion was. What I'm suggesting is not make the medic the radio man and make everyone else use the MP5 and or the M16, all that jazz. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm suggesting is the subvariants of that are distributed to them, but they're also cross-faction because, well, the MP5 has been built since what, the 70s or so, and they're still making new ones today. So the Spec Ops, they have the MP5 10 millimeter SD, probably the best one for them. But the radio operator, well, he's got to lug that radio equipment all the time. So he gets the normal one. But the medic, he's so valuable because, well, he can prevent your awesome, Commander Winters from, dying from infection. So he gets the worst version of the MP5K, which is just spray and pray. But in return, his target acquisition time for that weapon or reload, if you want to make it more balanced, is faster. That's what I'm getting at. I'm also saying cross faction weapons is just look at CERC and the police faction have an MP5. That the end of story, no questions asked. And you can that's why I'm saying. I'm not saying, oh my God, radio operator, assault, sniper, and spec ops all need to have the MP5 A5 SB264 with underslung grenade launcher like Half-Life 1. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, I totally get what you mean by that. I mean, like, we do have a lot of templates of like different variants because I kind of was looking at like World War C of where they not like that's their customization system, but how they have like subgenres of the same weapon. It's just lower tech versions of that weapon. So, like for instance, yeah, the Spec Ops have the MP5 SD with the 10 millimeter, and then the Radio Op has just a 9 millimeter option. And so like looking into like how we can play with that and having like faster reloads and stuff like that, that is definitely a good idea. And kind of playing into like the spread system, I totally do agree with that. It's just more of I guess my biggest caveat is the medic is useful in that regard, but at the same time that's his only thing. And I kind of feel like the assaults would kind of be able to piggyback off of that same medic system if they could just do it as well. That's where I'm coming from with them. Is where the assaults are, I don't know. I just feel like the medic out of all the classes could be merged with the assaults.
Well, I'll say this: if you really want to make the assault more balanced, get rid of some of his build abilities and get rid of some of his luxuries, but instead give him weapon customization, and no one else gets it. So basically, every single assault rifle now can have an underslung grenade launcher and make the grenade rather than a timed explosive, it just detonates on impact, as an example of something. Make the assault all around, but he can't do anything regarding any other class. Of course, that's your guys' decision, not mine. I'm just spitballing things I've seen in other games, like Battlefield 3, because Battlefield 4 I never got to play. Back when the only cross weapon was, shotguns.
Oh, Battlefield 3, the cross weapon was the M16A3 for the assaults. That was cross. um I would definitely say like I kind of feel like the heavies need an ability for ammo. I think that'd be nice. Like, yeah, you have the ammo column, but like Battlefield 4 had these small little ammo packs. It wasn't like an actual ammo drop. It was just like, here's like an extra half magazine type of thing. And so like they could kind of disperse those in like small doses and they'd have like a cooldown obviously to kind of give them more on the field. So like when you're in a pinch, they become a lot more useful for everyone in the group. And for the assaults, I do agree with the underbarrel customization option. I think an easier way of how our system currently works, if all the weapons that the assault have currently in their disposal do have underbarrels already on them, would be a lot easier in terms of how our system works. So that might be a way that we could go about that because the Scar is the only weapon with an underbarrel model on it.
Well, before everyone else jumps in, I hate to interrupt the devs of a really good game and a really good project. Why not just make it an upgrade from the research tab? That would make it so that it's more valuable to go into that tab, whether that's through the command station or through the doctrine.
I actually did mention this yesterday, Robert, actually, about making weapons have like well in the tech tree is that you could research better weaponry for like the different classes that would kind of like basically let's say you invest into like the assault tree 2, it replaces a lot of the weapons with more beefier amped up versions of that weapon or something like that and kind of add more to the whole tech wing to begin with. Because right now, all you do is just unlock classes per se. You unlock the shredder rounds, and you can unlock the spec ops, unlock the medic, etc. And I was kind of thinking ways that we can kind of add more to it, of where it's people actually, because I've seen people that are just sitting at like just 2 million cash and have nothing to do.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're suggesting that we add a research tree or a research building, whatever it is, that allows you to tech down or basically like upgrade a unit, like basically like go down a tier list of like, oh, like the assault starts at tier 0, so he has like maybe 2 guns, and then when he gets to tier 1, then we give him another 2 or 3 guns, and now he has like 4 or 5 or 5 or 6 guns, like something like that. Or would it
Yeah.
replace the current? Would every tier replace the previous tier's weapons? I'm trying to
Well,
understand fully.
I'm kind of torn. I kind of want to do the latter of where it replaces his current inventory.
But there are
Because I feel
always
like that'd
pros
be
and cons
cleaner.
to having older weapons in certain cases, though. But it would be cleaner. It would absolutely be
It
cleaner.
would be
But I
cleaner.
guess what the counter argument to that is that if the current weapon widget is not made for the sheer amount of weapons that we have in the game right now. So
Yeah,
if the weapon
absolutely.
widget was but if the weapon widget was redesigned fundamentally from a UI standpoint, we could make it look like an MMO window where it's like you could have a shit ton of weapons there, and then you can click on it, and it makes it larger, and it shows all the details maybe in a preset panel almost. And that way we could have an expansive like weapon upgrade tier for every class. So you could sink all that extra money into theoretically over phases of the game to like get more weapons for the assault. Like to maybe open up the assault so he's more like multi-purposed of like, okay, maybe some more ranged weapons, maybe some more different types of shotguns. Like I don't know. Like something like that is what you're advocating for?
Yeah, I think that if we could kind of branch that across the board, I feel like that would definitely add more uniqueness to the classes as it stands. Because right now, like they just have every weapon, not every weapon, but they have like 5 weapons roughly in their arsenal that they can just pick from at any given time if they have the money. And that's what I mean. Like, if
The
you suit
pacing
up
is off.
all, yeah, if you suit up all your assaults with the Scar and just throw them out there. I mean, it's just GG. I mean, for a while there, the AUG was just decimating. Like, as it stands in our top-down example map, there's like 50 assault with like an AUG. They obliterate. I threw those 2 lieutenants in there. They just got melted. So, I mean, that's what I mean. It's just like, as it stands right now, I feel like I could just I feel confident in the assault's ability to carry me to victory.
Oh,
I don't need anyone else.
I
Um,
cry every time.
may I just give you a suggestion if you're gonna make an actual research tree for classes?
Hit
I
me
s-
with it. And then we gotta get overdrive before we wrap up for today.
yes. Look at the Hoi 4 tech tree system. How they do like the naval
Can
system.
you link that? Because I don't know how to spell that. If you can you take a picture or a video
I will
explaining that?
I will get you actually what they plan on they're planning on redoing the naval in Hoi again. So I will get you their like website, and I'll give you an image
Sure.
of what it's supposed to be like. Because
Yes, please.
so I want to make one last point. Um, rather than the AUG being the base weapon for assault, why not
Quick
just make
PM
it
for us today.
Yeah,
like
it's
a
already we swapped it back.
Yeah, we
I-
were discussing it back and forth, and it was like the AUG is just too destroying the planet to like make that the base weapon.
no
That thing
the
was hitting Neptune. Sorry.
I'm saying the
Yeah.
M16A3, but stuck in 3 auto or single fire. So that means
We did
assault it's
that.
even lower. It's
Oh,
even
we did
lower,
that. That
but
was bad.
but
It
has
was
Why was
long
that bad
bad.
range.
again? Remind me
Oh, it
again why
was
that was bad.
bad. They were useless.
Oh
Remember when
yeah,
we
because we
first
got.
introduced the M16? Oh my god.
Just
I
make
love
it
that gun though.
just
I
make
love
I
it
that gun
got so many
personally.
death threats. Like, why'd you do that?
just make it the A4 so that way it's fully automatic.
Right?
All right, well, I'm gonna leave you guys to finish up your thing. Thank you for giving me your time. I
Thank
wish you
you
the
for asking.
best. I wish you for the best of the game, and I suggest more straw pulls.
Okay.
Oh
Well, here
yeah,
let
I
me let
always
me let me get
actually get on his
overdrive in here.
ass about straw pulls.
Oh, that's nice.
All right. Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, you're the
Other-
last one. Wrap it up. What do you
All right.
Give us a good one.
We were talking about weapons, and I also wanted to discuss some interesting bugs we found on a playtest with me and Suki, because that was a little odd. I was a little perplexed.
Okay.
For weapons, I'm pretty sure you're aware of the icons changing no matter what weapon is being used, and you go back to them, and the icon changes back to like the
Ye-
Scar L.
Yeah, I know. That's already in tonight's
Oh,
work
that's
list. We're
guard
fixing that.
tower, right?
For shared weapons, I know this might be a little bit complex, but if a unit runs out of ammo on their primary, is there like are you planning on adding like secondaries? I know they might be just fucking useless. Excuse my language, but oh, I hear a chuckle. I'm guessing that is a yes or a no.
Michael, you got this. I believe in you. You're the chosen one.
Tell me.
So let me sit down with the Leaf Village real quick. So basically, we talked about having secondary weapons because, as it stands, if I don't know if you got to play with the operator when we first introduced him, he
Yes,
had a
I did.
secondary pistol. We were looking at kind of piggybacking off of that system and giving that to all the units to be able to, if they run out of ammo, they would just automatically switch to it. But then we were like, well, then you'd have to have a button to switch back if they did get ammo, or they would just automatically know. But then you would run into instances where you'd have people like, well, swapping to your secondary is faster than reloading.
Here we go.
Modern Warfare. So like, I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's just like we have talked about it. It's just implementing it would probably take some resources to kind of get in without it being buggy.
That's fair. And let's be honest here, picking up an enemy's weapon that already has ammo in is faster than even swapping.
What
Yeah, but
is
then
it?
you have to look down, find the capsule, then press F for respect and pick it up and all that other stuff. You know.
Here we go.
Fair enough.
But
Um,
we are looking into it. It's on our list. So right now the operator only has one weapon, so we don't utilize too many resources into like the revamp because people were like, focus more on the RTS. We're gonna kill you. So we were like, okay, fine. We'll do the operator to a base level, get him functional, and then we'll come back to the operator. And potentially when we like get more of the fundamentals baked in for the operator for like the ability to do the attachments again and the ability to switch to a second pistol and figure out what pistol that's going to be if we're just going to reskin the same one and put it back in, then we'll potentially look at it then. But that is something that we want to do because I know that we were talking about that and we were talking about meleeing of some caliber. So then that way, like if people are really right up on them, you can have a toggle so that way like they'll just hit them with the gun, and then they'll
Instead of
like
your
recoil
like
like
elbow with the
More
operator.
buttons.
God.
basically like the butt, whatever, some kind of melee. Instead we're looking at similar to Total War. Sorry, not Total War, bloody
Big-
Warhammer.
Yes.
M9 bayonets on the end of my Scar-L.
Jeez, well, we're not putting bayonets in there, but we'll melee them. So the idea is that, like, they'll be able to. Or maybe I guess we could put that as an upgrade. I don't know. But essentially, we wanted. Look, I was looking at Dawn of War, Winter, like Soul Storm or Winter Crusade, Winter's Assault. I'm sorry, that was Dark Crusade with the Necrons. Fucking love. But yeah, the idea is that we wanted to basically look at that in the future. It's just, again, we're just trying to squeeze all this in there because we're behind on the roadmap, and right now we're trying to haul ass to get the performance where it needs to be, the factions, the dynamic, the civilian stuff in there, and then at that point we think we can just kind of take a breather,
All right.
cool for a couple weeks, and then get the rest of the stuff in there and just kind of prioritize based off of the major items.
For shared weapons, I have one weapon that should be available to all units, regardless of, their usefulness, as Michael said. Because I agree, I've done a run with assaults, and goddamn, I wiped the map in, like, I don't know, 13 days. Like,
Oh
completely.
god, it's depressing.
Nation Zero and everything.
Uh,
So, M16A3, now hear me out. You might not want to give that to pilots, because they're not going to fucking fit that in the cockpit. But for like gunners, they could put like a drum mag in it, 100-round drum mag, so it'd be like a special M16A3, and maybe like a shorter mag for like the radio operator or the medic. So maybe it's like 7.62, but a 20-round magazine. So something like that. And other than that, all the bugs I found, and that would be it.
oh, but Suki already posted bugs in the programmers chat.
God,
You know, if
yes.
she already.
I saw. She sent me screenshots as well.
God help us all. We're gonna be dead
Girl,
tonight.
The minigun one, I couldn't stop laughing. It was too funny.
Oh yeah, she was taking pictures and posting that in our development Discord, and every picture she would post, I'd get more and more like head going down, crying on the
Just
inside.
know, next
that was-
update, I'm gonna be finding more and more and more bugs.
I cry every time, but good. Find them all. It's like Pokemon. You gotta catch them all, except it's
No,
bugs
it's like Star
instead.
Troopers. I gotta kill every single one of them.
Oh, that's an even better comparison. I like yours. I'm gonna use that now.
Have a good day. You guys are doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Yep, I'm gonna leave now.
This guy,
Okay.
I don't know who he is.
I know, right? Well, I think that will conclude our AMA for today. Thank you guys for coming. If you're interested in finding ways to support the team, tell your friends about the game. Consider supporting us on Patreon. We're pretty much self-funded, so we basically just do the game based off of the sales that we get from Patreon, donations we get on PayPal, and just or swag, the stuff we sell in our little swag store. So anything helps. Oh, shut up. And then everything kind of helps to basically just keep us afloat, keep things going. So we appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for coming. We do love sitting down with you guys and talking about the game, figuring out what we need to focus, as long as everything's done in an orderly, professional manner. Like, it's cool. We get it if something suck or if they need help or whatever of the sort. So that will conclude today's thing, and we will catch you guys next week at the same time. And Derivar will be here then.
Later.
Yay!